My name is Ava Mitchell. I was 19 years old when I overheard my father sign a "Do Not Resuscitate" order for me. Not because I was dying. Because treatment was too expensive. I still remember lying silently in that hospital bed while machines beeped beside me. The doctor asked carefully, "Mr. Mitchell, are you absolutely certain?" And my father replied without hesitation, "We can't afford to keep wasting money." Flushed heartbreak. Wasting money. That's what my life sounded like to him. Not his daughter. Not his child. An expense. But what my father didn't know was this. 72 hours later, he would lose everything he spent his entire life protecting. His money, his reputation, his family, everything. And the person responsible for exposing him publicly was the one daughter he tried to give up on. My name is Ava Mitchell. I grew up in a wealthy neighborhood outside Boston with my parents and my older brother Ethan. From the outside, we looked perfect. Big house, luxury cars, private schools. My father Richard Mitchell owned a successful financial consulting company. To everyone else, he looked disciplined and intelligent. At home, he treated love like a business transaction. Everything had value. Everything had conditions. Especially me. See, I was born with a heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Most days I looked healthy. But sometimes my heart rhythm became dangerously unstable without warning. Growing up meant constant hospital visits, medication, monitoring, and constant reminders from my father about how expensive I was. Even as a little girl, I remember overhearing arguments late at night. "Do you know how much these treatments cost?" Dad would snap. Meanwhile my mother stayed silent. Always silent. That hurt almost more, because silence can become its own kind of betrayal. My brother Ethan never experienced any of this. Dad adored Ethan. Football games, private tutors, new cars. Ethan was an investment. I was a burden. At 14, after one surgery complication, I overheard my father speaking to my mother in the kitchen. "We've already spent enough trying to fix her." Fix her, like I was broken furniture. After that day, something inside me changed permanently. I stopped asking for things. Stopped complaining. Stopped crying in front of people. I became emotionally quiet. Because sick children learn very early how guilty their existence makes others feel. Still, despite everything, part of me desperately wanted my father to love me. Every daughter does. When I graduated high school with honors, Dad barely looked up from his phone during dinner. But when Ethan got accepted into a mediocre business program months later, Dad rented a yacht party. That was my family. One child celebrated, one child tolerated. At 19, my condition suddenly worsened. One afternoon during college orientation, I collapsed walking across campus. Everything afterward became hospital lights and panic. Doctors discovered severe complications affecting my heart function. I needed immediate specialized treatment. Expensive treatment. I remember Mom sitting beside my hospital bed crying softly while Dad paced the room frustrated. Not scared. Frustrated. Finally the cardiologist entered holding paperwork carefully. His expression looked serious. Without aggressive treatment, Ava's condition could become fatal. Silence filled the room. Then Dad asked the question that still haunts me. "How much are we talking?" Not, "Can she survive? Will she recover?" "How much?" The doctor explained costs quietly. Specialists, procedures, long-term care. Dad's jaw tightened instantly. That night I pretended to sleep while my parents spoke outside my room. Then I heard words no child should ever hear. "Ethan's future matters too," Dad whispered sharply. "We can't drain everything for one person. One person, not your daughter. One person." Hours later, the doctor returned privately asking if I understood my treatment plan. Before I could answer, Dad interrupted. "We need cheaper options." The doctor hesitated carefully. "There really aren't safer alternatives." Dad sighed angrily, then finally said it. "Prepare the DNR paperwork." The room froze. Even the doctor looked stunned. "Mr. Mitchell, your daughter is 19. Dad crossed his arms coldly. "And I'm realistic." I couldn't breathe hearing those words. My mother started crying softly. But she still said nothing. Not one word defending me. That silence shattered me completely. After the doctor left, Dad finally entered my room. He looked uncomfortable seeing me awake. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes life forces hard financial decisions. Financial decisions, like canceling a vacation, selling stock, not choosing whether your daughter lives or dies." I turned my face toward the wall silently. Because if I looked at him, I would break. That night I cried harder than I ever had in my entire life. Not because I feared dying, Because I finally understood something devastating. My father truly believed I was worth less than money. The next morning Ethan visited alone. Unlike Dad, Ethan looked shaken. Apparently he overheard the DNR conversation too. He sat beside me quietly for several minutes before whispering, "I didn't know he was this bad." "Neither did I." "Not fully." Ethan grabbed my hand carefully. "I'm sorry, Ava." That apology mattered more than he realized. Because for once, someone acknowledged the cruelty happening openly around me. Then Ethan confessed something unexpected. Dad planned to transfer company ownership almost entirely to him within weeks. Everything. Properties. Investments. While I received nothing except a tiny trust fund controlled by Dad himself. Not because Ethan asked for it. Because Dad believed Ethan was the valuable child. Hearing that should have destroyed me emotionally. Instead, something cold settled inside me. Clarity. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to earn my father's love. Because you cannot earn humanity from someone who treats compassion like financial weakness. Then something unexpected happened. One of the hospital nurses quietly approached me later that evening. Apparently the cardiologist was furious about my father's decision. He connected me with a nonprofit medical advocacy organization helping young patients denied critical care. Within hours, lawyers and specialists became involved. And suddenly, things changed fast. Very fast. Turns out my father's insurance absolutely covered most of my treatment. He lied. Not because he couldn't afford care. Because he didn't want to pay deductibles, reducing Ethan's inheritance. When the advocacy lawyers discovered this, everything exploded, especially after hospital ethics staff launched an internal investigation. My father panicked immediately. Not about me, about publicity. Because Richard Mitchell built his entire reputation around family values, branding and business seminars. And now legal complaints accused him of trying to deny life-saving treatment to his own daughter for financial convenience. 3 days later, 72 hours after signing the DNR, Dad lost his biggest corporate contract. Then another. Then another. News spread terrifyingly fast through local business networks. One leaked ethics complaint destroyed decades of reputation overnight. Suddenly nobody wanted the family values businessman who abandoned his sick daughter publicly connected to their company. At home things became chaos. Investors backed away, clients disappeared, bank accounts froze under investigation. Meanwhile my treatment officially began successfully through emergency advocacy approval. Ironically, the daughter Dad tried abandoning survived. And the empire he protected started collapsing instead. 1 week later Dad stormed into my hospital room furious. Not apologetic. Furious. "Do you realize what you've done?" I stared at him quietly. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him anymore. "You did this yourself." He actually looked shocked hearing that. Because controlling people never expect the people they hurt to speak clearly. Dad paced angrily. "Everything I built is falling apart." Then finally, years of pain exploded out of me. "You signed papers preparing for your daughter to die." Silence hit instantly. Even my mother looked shattered hearing it spoken aloud. I continued through tears. "And you still think you're the victim?" Dad opened his mouth, then closed it. Because for once, there was nothing left to justify. My mother suddenly began sobbing uncontrollably. Then she whispered something that changed everything. "I should have protected you." I looked at her stunned. Because after years of silence, she finally admitted the truth. That night Mom left with me instead of Dad. Apparently she filed for separation 2 days later. Ethan too. He refused company ownership entirely. Dad lost not only business. He lost the illusion of control, keeping everyone around him silent. Months passed. Treatment slowly improved my condition. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to breathe easier. Enough to live normally again. Meanwhile Dad's empire continued collapsing publicly. The final blow came during a financial ethics conference where leaked hospital documents surfaced online permanently. The audience walked out mid-speech. Richard Mitchell became a cautionary story instead of a success story. And honestly, part of me still mourned him. Not the man he was. The father I spent my whole life wishing existed. One snowy evening nearly a year later, Dad visited my small apartment unexpectedly. For the first time in my life, he looked old, smaller somehow. He sat quietly staring at the floor before finally whispering, "I thought protecting money meant protecting family." Tears filled my eyes instantly. Because that sentence explained his entire life. Then he looked at me brokenly. And I destroyed both. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then finally I answered honestly. "You stopped being my father the moment you treated my life like an expense report." Dad cried silently hearing that. And strangely, I think he finally understood. Too late, but truly understood. Before leaving, he whispered, "I am sorry, Ava." The words I wanted my entire childhood. Yet somehow, they felt unbearably heavy now. Because apologies cannot erase survival scars. But they can reveal truth. And sometimes truth matters too. Today I'm 24 years old. Healthy enough to work, travel, live fully. Mom and Ethan remain close to me now. Dad, we speak occasionally, carefully, distantly. Some wounds heal slowly, others become reminders. But one thing changed forever after those 72 hours. I finally understood my life had value. Even if my father couldn't see it. And that realization saved me far more than medicine ever could. When people value money more than human life, they eventually lose both. Real family is not measured by financial investment, it is measured by compassion, protection, and sacrifice. Silence in the face of cruelty is also a form of betrayal. And sometimes, the people who survive being unloved become stronger than the ones who withheld love in the first place. If this story touched your heart, thumbs up, like this video. Bell, subscribe for more emotional stories. Speech balloon, comment below. Could you ever forgive a parent after something like this? Flushed heartbreak.